Top Gear.
In Top Gear tonight, Michele with a cautionary tale for those returning to two-wheeled life, Quentin all dewy-eyed about a proper old Rover, and me driving 4 of the best cars in the world, briskly.
Come on, come on. Yes! Yes, I've got a signal on a mobile phone! Just got to call the producer. Shut me a sec. Yeah, hi, John. Yeah, how's things? Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah. Listen, John, surely you remember what happened when I did the Vectra? I couldn't think of anything to say. What, the Astra? No, I'm looking at it now. No, it's not ugly. It's nothing. I'll tell you what it's like. Have you got a piece of A4 on your desk? Just blank A4, right, yeah? Paper. Just colour it in blue. That's what it's like. John, at least the Vectra had fancy door mirrors. This one's just got ordinary ones. There's nothing to talk about. It's ordinary. John, I cannot give you 5 minutes on this car. I can't give you 1 minute. I have nothing to say. Hello? Hello? I'm sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. It seems that I'm under orders here. I do have to give you 5 minutes on the Astra, so why don't you make a cup of tea or something?
You're simply the best.
Hold on a minute. This is... Got to change this tape. Wait a minute.
Shoot that poison and run to my heart. Shoot that poison and run.
This new car comes to you from General Motors, the American giant that has more money than God. It owns Chevrolet, Buick, Oldsmobile, Holden, Pontiac, Saab, Isuzu, Vauxhall, Opel and Cadillac. It's by far the largest car company in the world, and I've suddenly thought of something interesting to say. I went to the dentist yesterday and had 4 fillings, and do you know something? It didn't hurt at all. It's amazing how dentistry has come on these last few years, and some things haven't. Ooh, that looks like a nice pub. I could do with a coffee.
Shoot that poison and run.
Thanks very much. Right, the new Astra then. I've got all the blurb here in this rather extravagant laminated press pack, which tells me that in the fullness of time there'll be a choice of engine, 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, which is the one out there, 1.8, 2 litre, and a brace of worthless diesels. We've got a choice of body too. Eventually there'll be a 4-door saloon, but for now we've got the pictures here. Hold on a minute. We've got a sporty 3-door hatch. We've got a not-so-sporty 5-door hatch. We've got a 5-door estate. Ooh, heavens, which can carry a lot of suitcases by the looks of things. Why do women need so many suitcases when they go away? Anyway, what else has it got? Lightweight suspension, fully galvanised body, new engine mountings. Yes, all very good, but what about the prices? Come on, prices, always at the back. There we are. Heavens. The cheapest 3-door 1.6 is 11,570 on the road. That 115-mile-an-hour luxury CD thing out there is 13,995. That's £1,000 less than a Golf. I think I need to forget the coffee and take this car a little bit more seriously. It may not have anti-lock brakes as standard, but despite that low price, it does have air conditioning. However, this is not a cool car. And nor is it desperately hot either. The engine is best described as a device for moving you around. The handling, though, is a revelation. It's got electric power steering. Couple that to really rather good suspension, and you get a car that's both fun and secure. This, of course, is a good thing because I've got a little red light on the dashboard telling me the airbag isn't working. Fuel economy looks quite good too. We got 33 miles to the gallon out of this one, and I also hear insurance will cost just slightly less than a dog license. Then there's the interior. It's still hatefully drab, but the steering wheel now moves in and out and up and down. There's a lot more space in here than there ever was in the old Astra. It's more comfortable, more quiet, more refined. It's quite nice. Ish. This new car has surprised me. I was expecting it to be willfully dull, like the Vectra, but it isn't. I was expecting yet another awful-to-drive Vauxhall, but it's all right. It's much, much better than the old Astra, but it costs the same. Trouble is, of course, that being better than the old Astra is not that hard, and not necessarily enough. You see, the Daewoo offers a better warranty and after-sales package. If you want unsurpassed reliability, you have the Toyota Corolla. The Fiat Bravo is much nicer to drive. Then, of course, you've got the Icon. The Volkswagen Golf has street cred that the Astra can only dream about. But the worst news of all for Vauxhall is this, the new Ford Focus, the Escort replacement. It looks fabulous, and it'll have independent rear suspension, so it should be a little cracker to drive. It'll be launched in the autumn. Now, I know the Astra has one of these fantastic little things for getting the dust caps off the tyre valve. And I know my colleagues in the newspapers and magazines have been saying it's a great all-rounder. Not particularly brilliant in one area, like that lot over there, just quite good at everything. I don't know, though, even with the benefit of the biblical wind that we've had all day, it doesn't really blow my frock up.
There are some people whose motor cars must be British. Even the very best that Johnny Foreigner can make simply won't do. These days, the choice is between Coventry or Crewe, a Jaguar or a Rolls. But back in the 60s, Jaguars were the domain of spivs, crooks and bookmakers. If you wanted real class, you drove a Rolls or a Rover. For nearly 15 years, the Rover P5B was the official transport of the establishment. With a portly dignity and polished patriotism, it became the perfect motoring embodiment of governmental grandeur, which is why every Prime Minister, from Harold Willson to Margaret Thatcher, was chauffeured round in a Rover. An official fleet of nearly 100 ebony black 3.5-litre saloons, some of them armour-plated, wafted Britain's ruling elite from summit to summit. And no matter what your political persuasions, Whitehall insisted you flew the flag with a Rover P5B. In 1967, a few shillings shy of £2,000 bought you pomp and power. The American Buick 3.5-litre V8, hence the B designation, could hustle 1.5 tons of English elegance to a brisk 110 miles an hour. The P5B was unique, the last of a distinguished line. And we aren't the only people who reckon this old dowager is special. Rover have realised too. To them, this gentle giant is everything a modern Rover should be, which is why they've been quietly buying up immaculate examples to chauffeur around visiting dignitaries. All of which means the P5B is about to undergo a bit of a renaissance. And we all know what happens when classics get fashionable, prices go up. But let me let you into a little secret. At the moment, the Rover P5B is criminally cheap. They're a big old barge, but better built than most. Rust is the main enemy, both on the brightwork, sills, wings and valances. Interiors cost a backbencher's salary to retrim, so make sure the period delights like these pre-decimal cup holders and gorgeous, gorgeous toolkit are all there, present and correct. The automatic gearboxes are very strong and that wonderful V8 will last forever, as long as its oil is regularly changed. We picked this tired but running 1970s saloon out of the classifieds for a rather strong $3.5 grand. But you'd be much better served buying a tidy coupe for 5,000 to 6,000, while Concours winners can command up to 10 grand plus. As for living with a P5B, I can't pretend they'll cost pennies to run, but who said class ever came cheap? But let me give you one final compelling reason why you too should own a P5B. Because there is a very special person who, like us, is rather taken with these regal old Rovers. Her Majesty the Queen has owned not one but two P5Bs since 1972 and has given Top Gear express permission to drive this, her very own personal car. And when you're pulling up to a palace like Blenheim, nothing else will do. Her Majesty has covered just 6,000 miles in JGY 280, and as you would expect, it is immaculate, although good manners prevent me from giving you a valuation. It is thoroughly agreeable to drive. In fact, what's the word I'm looking for? Majestic. So if you want a motor car that insulates you from the wild and whirling world, that has elegance and breeding, then look no further. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Rover P5B, a classic in a class of its own.
Back in the 70s, young men dreamt of Lambos and Ferraris. But for many of them, reality was two-wheeled.
Middle, is it you? Middle, is it you?
25 years on, the BSA long gone, a settled family life, a company car, and the time to prove to themselves before it's too late that they're not boring old has-beens. So older, but not necessarily wiser, they become born-again bikers.
For about the same price as a Fiesta, you can afford to buy yourself a sensational 160-mile-per-hour superbike, which bears no relation to that long, scrapped 1970s runabout. Now, you may have the money to buy the bike, and of course the gear to look the part, but if it's been 20 years since you sat astride any bike, let alone one that can go from 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, then that's an incredible leap to make. And that's how born-again bikers can end up becoming another statistic.
Young guys larking around and ending up having a fatal accident, as in this episode of Casualty, is perhaps the common view of the sort of people who end up killing themselves on bikes. In fact, the reality is quite different. Despite individual cases of bikers riding like lunatics, serious accidents involving bikes are down by 71% since compulsory basic training was introduced 8 years ago. But the death rate for 30-somethings is up by 35%. In some parts of the country, 90% of fatal bike accidents involve the over 30s.
The bikes nowadays, for example, the Fireblade and the Blackbird, this type of bike are very high powered. They accelerate exceptionally quick, and in a built-up area there was one where he decided to go from 30 mile an hour up to 70 mile an hour in a very short space of time. And as much as certain bikes perhaps wouldn't stay with that style of bike, he can't actually outdo the camera.
So what is it that these essentially law-abiding citizens do to end up killing themselves?
It seems they don't take into account the difference in performance and acceleration between the bikes of their youth and their present machines. In fact, their performance simply doesn't match up to the bike's performance.
Police say that born-again bikers almost always have the same sort of accident. They take a bend too fast and lose control. Put a Honda 250 next to a modern-day sports bike like the Fireblade and the difference becomes obvious. The 250 has basic linear suspension, single-disc brakes and a top speed of between 80 and 85. You can see why a born-again biker might be somewhat overwhelmed by a top speed of double that and a machine that can manage 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds. Jeff Crowther, a lecturer in consumer behaviour at Huddersfield University, has made a study of born-again bikers and why they feel the overwhelming urge to return to two wheels.
As a car driver, he's a motorist. As a motorcycle rider, he's a motorcyclist. And that takes him into a whole new area, an area where he can experiment with new imagery, with a new appearance. But much more than that, he can get fulfilment from his driving because of the absorption you get from being a biker. Some talk about the mantric throbbing of the engine.
The what?
The mantric throbbing of the engine as it buzzes away between the legs. You know, there's a closeness to nature. You know, the wind in the face, the sensual aspects of biking are exciting, enthralling, and it's something which can provide a great deal of physical stimulation as well as mental stimulation. And of course, there's an emotional involvement too.
Some born-again bikers are all too aware of the changes that have taken place over the last 20 years.
I found that traffic was heavier, people weren't looking out for what you were doing. It was a nightmare, really.
I rode the very same bike that I rode 11 years ago. A friend of mine had rebuilt it, and the brakes basically just don't work, and the handling was frightening.
I've been a pillion for about 15 years, and I thought, oh, I don't know, it's got to be done. Go out as one of the lads and enjoy it, you know.
When I had a bike last time, I used to use it for my only means of transport. Now I'm using it as a hobby, and it's very pleasurable at that.
Many police forces have identified born-again bikers as a major problem. They believe the solution isn't to stop them riding, but to educate them.
We're talking about responsible adults here, people with commitments. And yet they're buying the machines, they're not getting the training. And the performance of the bikes which you can buy now is phenomenal. All they need is basic training in safety, and they'll live a lot longer.
Some forces offer training, and there are many independent trainers. But with sports bike sales up 77%, many courses are oversubscribed. In fact, Honda is spending more than £1 million and offering 15 hours of free training to anyone who buys a bike from one of their dealers.
We learned how to steer, didn't we?
Yeah, that
what were you doing before?
That might sound very strange, but no, the technique of steering, of just applying the opposite lock slightly to get you around the corners better. And it
shift the position of the bike so much easier in the road.
It worked perfectly.
Yeah.
Looking forward to see what's coming, and the safety aspect, it was very good.
You're always working to assess the situation of the road in front and always expecting the worst, and that's a useful tip.
The majority of people particularly want to deal with cornering, positioning, assessment of bends, that sort of thing. I've never seen anyone come off the course other than with a big smile from ear to ear. So if that works, that's fine. That's what it's all about.
So you may have the licence, you've got the bike, and you've got the free time to enjoy the long-lost love of your youth. But if you haven't got the ability to match the machine, then it could all go horribly wrong. So you need to bite the bullet and get back to basics.
The modern GT car comes in a variety of shapes and guises. Front-engined, rear-engined, mid-engined, rear-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. But what's the best? What's fastest? Well, we can all read the 0 to 60 times and the top speed claims. But what's quickest overall? Not only in a straight line, but round the corners as well. We took this group of GTs to the Pembury circuit to find out. If you had to guess at the outcome, the safest bet would be to pick the car with the best power-to-weight ratio. A simple calculation: the more horsepower per tonne, the faster the car should be. A Grand Prix car has about 1,500 horsepower per tonne. A 1.6 Mondeo has just 74, while our little group average around the 200 mark, ranging from the brutish Chevrolet Corvette with 230 down through the Porsche 911 and Honda NSX to the heavyweight Nissan Skyline, which in standard trim has only 182. But let's start with the nimble little Honda. This 1.5 mile Pembrey circuit has got just about every type of corner, from high speed to this very tight hairpin, where the Honda just powers in and then, whoa, what bit of oversteer. A Grand Prix car will go around here in about 40 seconds. I think we'll take a bit longer. In fact, it took an extra 30 seconds, but that's still an average of around 80 miles an hour. With 276 horsepower from its 3.2-litre V6, the Honda is the least powerful of the group, but it's second lightest and produces 196 horsepower per tonne. This NSX has been quite a handful. Despite having the mid-engine ideal layout, it's still obviously very much rear-biased in weight, and it is a very tail-happy machine. Glorious to drive, but you've got to have your arms ready to catch the slides into this second gear corner. That wonderful VTEC. What I was about to say was that the VTEC variable valve timing system provides a really solid power band right from when it chimes in at 4,800 revs all the way to its 8,300 limit. But try to show off too much, push the Honda too hard, and you're likely to find yourself looking at where you've just been. All right, enough of the ballet. On then to this wild child, the awesome Nissan Skyline. Its twin-turbo 2.6-litre straight-six engine will deliver anything from 280 horsepower with its standard computer chip to 550 if you want to spend an extra 12 grand, or even 1,000 horsepower if you just want to go down a drag strip. But it's the heaviest of our group, hence the poor power-to-weight ratio. Now, in actual fact, the Skyline is most of the time rear-wheel drive only, until it feels you need a bit of help. Which is why sometimes, when you get in a bit sideways, it sort of sorts it out for you. And there's a little gauge down there which you can hardly ever see, which normally reads 0 when it's 100% torque to the rear wheels. But when you get into a little bit of trouble going into a corner, it transfers torque to the front wheels and the gauge flicks up. Oh, now I'm in trouble, I need some help. Thank you, transmission. You took that corner very nicely. But you certainly notice the slight turbo lag. There isn't that instant push of power that's especially noticed, of course, in the Honda with that VTEC. However hard I tried, the Skyline seemed ready and willing to pull me out of trouble. Hugely confidence-inspiring, and with brakes to match its handling, this is an almost foolproof machine. Then to the Porsche, the 911, the car with the most famous engine hanging right out the back, that always had such a reputation for being a tail-happy car. Once the rear end broke away, you'd never get it back. But over the years, it's been refined and refined until now, this latest version, you'd hardly know the engine was right out the back. However, by pushing the car into the corner, it is possible to get the rear to move, and to really get a good lap time out of this Porsche, you need to just get that back to break away and then floor the throttle. If you go in with understeer, you'll come out with even more understeer. Oh. But if you try to give it a little bit of a flick, get the back out and a bit over the top, perhaps, but I hope you get the idea. The 911 is the lightest of the group, and with 300 horsepower from its 3.4-litre flat six, has 226 bhp per tonne. But whilst many complain that Porsche have spoilt the old characteristics, I just find the 911 gets better and better and better. Oh. Cut. On then to 5.7 litres of American V8 muscle, 339 horsepower and a tad lighter than the Skyline. This Detroit dream should be the quickest. Now, I have to own up, I've never been a big fan of American cars. Great in a straight line, but highly suspect when it comes to any corners. But everybody's been raving about this new Vette, and certainly I'm quite impressed so far. Unfortunately, like most of them being imported now, it's only got this automatic gearbox, which is bound to handicap it somewhat. But there is a fair degree of grip. It has admittedly got more rubber on the road than any of the opposition, but its main handicap is its steering. This 100-mile-an-hour kink flat out in the other cars definitely needs a confidence lift. And it's the feedback through the steering that lets the Corvette down. I only really know the Corvette's going to step out of line when it does so through the seat of my pants. But good lap times don't just come from basic grip. You need handling that gives you the confidence to take a car right to its limit, and that is something the Vette sadly fails to deliver. The combination of slightly vague steering and less sophisticated suspension damping handicaps its cornering potential. So, did the Detroit muscle win the day? Well, sadly not. Handicapped by that automatic transmission and still below par handling, it was nearly 4 seconds a lap slower than the opposition, which were covered by just 0.2 of a second. Despite its relative lack of power, the little Honda NSX nearly made it, thanks more to the characteristics of that VTEC engine than its still rather wayward handling. The Skyline GTR was nearly the winner. It was without doubt the safest and easiest car to drive right to the limit. But our winner, the Porsche 911, which suits me fine because, as far as I'm concerned, it's got the most stylish exterior, the most stunning interior, and the best feel-good factor of this little group. So, it would have been my choice anyway. Next week, Jeremy sets out to prove that fast cars are safer. Quentin gets close to a Swedish model, and Tony Mason buys a second-hand Ford.